We should have recorded this whole thing too.
Well, I don't know why I'm listening tonight. I got a feeling that the cards just ain't right. I'm so salty, must not give in to rage. And I'm wondering what those rollers will say. Scarves to the left of me, cheaters to the right. Here I am, gonna roll a derby tonight. Gonna roll a derby tonight. Gonna roll a derby tonight.
G'day, viewers, and welcome to this, your second episode of 2019 and about 24th episode all up of this Hidden City Roller Derby. I am your host, Simcof, and as always, I'm joined by a motley crew of other rollers, including West Coast Roller Butters.
Howdy, howdy.
Glen, aka Remedy.
Hello, how's it going?
And the return of El Toreadory.
If you're not into the whole brevity thing. Yeah, I'm here.
Toro, or Birdo, I guess we can call you.
I mean, you can call me anything you want, Ben. We're closer than that, you know.
Alright, well, I think the L5R world does not stop, and there has been an avalanche of things and stuff and other things that have happened in the last few weeks. So we might just kick it off with the old news segments. So I think there's been like 5 or 6 different posts from FFG and videos from the community, and there's been tournaments and
To you, does it feel a bit like a girl going hot and cold? Like for the first 6 months of 2018, it was like we were getting the cold shoulder, and now we're just getting lambasted with stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, we really seriously are. It's pretty amazing, to be perfectly honest. The absolute avalanche of stuff that we're getting at the moment, and there's the promise of more to come. But yeah, maybe it's a few months of hot stuff, and then there'll be another dry spell.
Oh well, relationships.
Yeah. All right. Crane Pack. Did you check that out, Bert? Did you see the post? There was all about this. Apparently, the Crane Pack, which is coming out after Unicorn, right?
Yeah, if you know anything about me, you know I never read the actual article, just the headlines and the photos, because I have a brain age of a child, so I didn't really read any of the lore or any of that stuff, but I did check out all the new cards. There was some great stuff in this pack, actually. In terms of design, I feel really comfortable with the way they're taking the game. There's some really cool stuff. Did you have a look?
Yeah, looks like dueling is a real thing now. Which is pretty exciting. There's a whole new stronghold, which makes dueling real, and it seems like there was another character that had an inbuilt duel. So there's lots and lots of passive duels around. So
Yeah,
it feels like they're actually making it workable.
The honor theme got a little bit of a boost, potentially anyway, with this dojo that lets you gain honor if you win duels, which is
Up to 3 in a turn. That's pretty amazing. It's a big...
Yeah, it just depends on whether or not that victory condition reaches that point where it's actually a threat. And if it does hit that point, then that card will see play. So I'm kind of excited. I mean, I miss Honor Victory from Truth. I like that was part of old game's suite of win conditions. So I hope it becomes a reality. I really do.
The dojo is 1.5 a yurt, so we're getting close to a good value there.
And because the great purple yurt standard, which every card should be measured by.
There was a bit of crazy response to one of these characters, the 4-drop, that lets you lock out a character from assigning for a round, and it's a Courtier and Shigenja. And what do you think should be the stats on this 4-drop such that ability is balanced? Well, the answer FFG says is 0. But it's kind of an interesting card. Like, we haven't seen anything like this, a 4-drop with 0 stats before. It's kind of crazy.
It's basically immune to dishonor, though, isn't it? It's extra buffs.
Yeah. I think what's cool about it is that I guess one of the concepts we haven't seen much of at all so far is the stopping people assigning, and that was something that was depending on the edition in the old L5R game. certainly stopping people assigning or making there a cost to assigning to attack or assigning to defend was definitely a part of the old game, and I actually quite liked it. It made people make hard choices. In this particular version, the opponent doesn't really get a choice, though.
I think it's pretty balanced. Like, looking at it, the effect's really powerful and it's going to be obnoxious to play against, but expensive character.
I think it's one of those cards where the turn it comes out, it may not threaten a lot, but the turn after is the one you have to worry about. But when we were doing worlds testing, we did try that. Well, at least I was trying that bird out of Crane, the 5-coster, and that seemed to be quite a strong effect if you could fire it.
Kenku's.
Yeah, but he's also Shigenja, so he has the problem of he may get bowed by against the waves. And also, this card increases the value of dispatch, funnily enough, for Unicorn. So
or Golden Outpost.
Yeah, well, there's a reason for why it's limited. I was like, why is this card limited? But maybe you're right. Maybe they're pushing more of these to assign, and so therefore you do need cards that can move you into or out of a conflict.
I think one small side effect is that this is more anti-tower. Really effective against a 2-drop. Like, oh, cool, you can't assign your... I mean, I guess the best character is probably like a border rider, right? But like, it's really... This card is there to deal with towers that you can't otherwise deal with. Guys like Mitsu with a Finger of Jade or something.
But speaking of Mitsu, though, you'll notice that, though, unfortunately, this guy is particularly susceptible to the old Void Fist.
Yeah, he doesn't like taking punches to the sternum. He is a frail man.
Do you know what's funny? You could use smuggling deal with him, right? So you could be really obnoxious and like play 2 characters and play smuggling deal. Is that something you can do?
Yes, you can, and that sounds like right up your alley, Remedy.
Is smuggling deal? You give your opponent one of your honor, or do they just gain one?
No, you give it to them.
Okay, so you have to lose one. Right.
It's at a cost of price. It's a bit expensive, but it can potentially do some pretty horrible stuff.
It doesn't matter. You've got 1.5 of a yurt sitting on your road. You'll get it back. like it'll come back.
Easy come, easy.
So, but I think you were probably most excited though. Was there a lion card spoiled that I saw in that pack?
Yeah, the best part about this card was I was asking a lot of the other top players what they thought about it, and they almost universally rated it a 3 out of 5 and just said, "Oh, yeah, it's mediocre." But when I saw this, I fell in love, despite the fact that she's got a Justin Bieber haircut. Like, that stat line in Lion, you guys got to realize, maybe relative to the rest of the card pool, she's mediocre. Like, 5 stats for 3, whatever. But in Lion, baby, oh my god, after like 2 cycles of getting fuck all, this is a card I'm actually really excited about. It's just going to smooth out our dynasty. Can you, is it true though, like, does she kind of make Fallen in Battle something more potential? Dude, you can... Yeah, fuck yeah. Why not? I don't know if I told you, Bert, but so 2019, this podcast is Lion positive. So each as Lion Clan to remind myself of how positive that gameplay experience can be. And my recent deck has been Even the Odds with Still of the Lion, with Voice of Honor as like the card that I'm trying to enable. Yeah. It honestly shit on your parade, man. Like, stay positive. No, I think it's something to look at, given that Lion will get like Crane Splash will get stronger, and this character fits right into that. So 3-cost slot with a I found with Lion the 3-cost slot was either Spirit Caller or Lion Pride Brawler. Yeah, there's nothing else. And Ikahara, but. Yeah. But you could replace it with this, I guess. Yeah, so I mean that's good for Lion players, right? They're getting. It seems like all the clan pack Lion cards are quite good. Like, you in one of the packs. And who was the character? Who did you get in the Scorp? This character is probably you've got since Ujiaki, I would say. Yeah. And you don't need to read the reaction. Just look at the stat line and play the card, and then occasionally she'll do some cool stuff.
Right.
The other thing I just want to say about this Crane pack, because Crane was my second favorite clan in the old game, and I had a really personal I identified a lot with both the honorable clans And seeing a whole pack devoted to a clan that I used to like play religiously is really cool. Because the clan packs so far are clans that I never really played that much in the old game. So man, this game just has so much history to it, and it makes me feel nostalgic. So that's really fun too.
Does anyone this new Lion character? What's her part in the story? Is she the one that was married to the original champ before Toreadory?
I really don't know. You'd have to.
It says her flavor text is my former husband's act with the Crane army are none of your concern. So,
well, that sounds, because basically they were taking Toshi Ranbo, and then the Crane champion came out and just assassinated him with an arrow, and she cracked the shits. So that sounds about
right. She's brooding pretty heavily with the Bieber haircut in the artwork.
Yeah, I've heard that. Right. So I think that you can tune into The Last Province, which is a fantastic lore-based podcast, and they will no doubt go into that in a lot of detail. There was some real cool community-generated stuff. Another Luxury Play Token sponsored YouTube series came out by the legendary Frotop. Glenn, I think you watched the videos?
Like some of the newer players, I needed a refresh on what a lot of the clans were doing after being away for a month. And I thought Frotop's videos where he kind of gets a deck that's an archetype that's quite popular right now, and kind of explains what they're trying to do with the different decks firstly, and then have a practice match to show it in action. I think it's been really good that he's been doing that, and I myself found it quite valuable just to learn why certain cards are cut or included. And I think for any players that are wanting to get better, or even just, for someone like me who stepped away for a month or so, it was just a good refresh to remind myself of what the meta is. They can be found on Frotop on video on YouTube, or on the Facebook group, and he probably linked it in the Discord as well. But he also did a really good beginner-friendly explanation of all the provinces and neutral cards in the game currently. And I thought that was a really great way to explain where those cards sit in your deck building decisions. Because I think this game, more than others, it can be quite intimidating to deck build for when you're starting off. And so it's just nice to have some reference points. Because I feel like maybe in 2018, we probably didn't have as much of that reference point, where you could have a deck on 5 rings, but you wouldn't really understand how to pilot it correctly or optimally.
I think that's a really good point. Like when you make a Magic the Gathering deck, or you see a deck list online, you can kind of see the way the cards synergize is so innate in the way that they're worded and stuff. You can kind of see how the deck's supposed to function. But with L5R, it really can be pretty mercurial. And Fro is one of the best dissectors of decks out there, in my opinion. I love those videos. I mean, I haven't watched since, back when I was a noob, but content creator.
I think I just advocate for someone like me. I found the only way to learn sort of moving forward is either by, getting crushed and realizing what you're doing wrong, but also seeing what the best of the best are doing and what they think about different cards or, decks. And you kind of learn from that experience. So I think it's been really great. And yeah, I hope he posts the next 3. He's done 4 of the 7 clans so far, and they're really good.
What I find really good about those videos is how he goes through and explains everything at first, gives you the primer, then he actually sits down and plays a game with that same deck, and really gives you a run through of what's going on, so you can sort of see him put it all into practice. And you see him fuck up a couple of times and make mistakes and laughs it off, which is great, because you know that L5R is a game of mistakes. That's what dictates who loses.
Yeah, even really strong players make plenty of mistakes.
The other thing is that, people have called this current meta a lame duck meta, which is true. Like, the decks that are being played now are not going to be championship decks in 2 months from now, whatever. But
they are in about, I think there's almost a dozen elemental championships, 2 Koteis. So there's a lot of major tournaments that use this,
and also
these cards.
Also, the lessons that are being imparted in these videos, they're to do with fundamental properties and game style stuff that these clans have. And so that's not going to be superseded just by having new tools to add to those decks. So learning the fundamentals is super, super important. And so I think there's probably a good spot to start.
Very true. Just before we've got a couple of cool little segments coming up, but there was one last little piece of news. It was quite complicated, and I think Glen's going to be the person who's best to relay it. But there was a ruling on that new Warm Welcome recursion card, which has some impact for Tadaka play and other bits and pieces. Glen, do you want to just, I don't get it, you want to talk about Warm Welcome?
Yeah, sure. So Warm Welcome was a one fate neutral card that's coming up. I think it's in the Children of the Empire pack. And it was a card that essentially let you play an event from your discard pile if your honor bid was lower than your opponent's. You still have to pay the cost, and it really only worked on action cards, as it was an action itself to play. But a question was asked to Tyler regarding whether or not you could play the card to use the effect to not play it from hand, but simply to do the rest of the effect. And the rest of the effect was if it was an event rather than an attachment or a character, that you can place the event at the bottom of your deck after resolving it. And so Tyler has ruled that when you do play Warm Welcome, if you can't do the effect, so for instance on an interrupt or a reaction, and the question really was in reference to Duty, a card that says when you would lose your last honor, interrupt, cancel that honor loss, and or framework step and gain 1 honor. And so you can now play Warm Welcome on the Duty and put the Duty back into the deck on the bottom. And so this creates recursion of some of the strongest cards in the game that are events. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and I guess part of that as well, whilst instantly and immediately out of the box, it may not be super relevant. It might be something that has an effect on every 100 games or so. But as we start to see more tutor effects come into place, we can actually search your deck for something. Being able to, the presence of a card in a deck is actually a big deal. So if you can, we've got this new Poison Master who can, pick poisons up, so you can potentially cycle poison cards back in and grab them, and there's a dragon tutor for attachments, and over time there's more ways of searching your deck to grab stuff. So I don't necessarily see this having a massive effect right now, but I can see that it will be an important part of some broken degenerative combo in a set coming your way soon.
I think it's kind of like the Phoenix box, where we all think that it's okay now with the amount of spells there are, but eventually it gets to that critical mass point where the recursion of those spells becomes something that may be a bit too imbalanced for the game. I think particularly things like limit 1 per deck cards that are events. If you are going to design a recursion effect, I think you need to be a bit more careful as to how the limited cards or the 1 per deck cards interact with the graveyard. You could just remove, you could just errata the card and say play Duty and then remove it from the game. I don't know.
I don't think that's necessary. Do you see that actually being a strong interaction?
No, I'm not saying now. I'm just saying for future design. I just think that if you're going to offer recursion into discard piles and to bring it back into your deck, you need to, if you're going to design really strong effects, you should have some countermeasures if you think that the card has the potential to imbalance game.
Yeah,
all it's going to take is one card like Duty that's a spell for any clan that's splashable, and to be able to trigger that twice out of a Phoenix box, I think is what Glen's talking about. It just takes one off the cuff, super potent one-off spell.
Or or something that works off Warm Welcome. Yeah. I just think, if there's an action card, maybe that's why Fate Worse Than Death is on the restricted list, for example, that if you Maze of Illusion to get your bid below your opponents on a turn, you can play the Fate Worse Than Death that you have in the discard pile rather than looking for your second or third copy. It means that you can run less of a certain card and have a more toolbox approach. It's a nicely designed card. I just think it needs to be something that's measured as you move forward.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind for them to put a blanket rule, design limitation on any recursion that just removes the card from the game after use.
That's what I'm saying.
But in this particular instance, I'm actually glad that they ruled it this way, because it adds another nifty trick to a card that already, in my opinion, is pretty heavily taxed. The 1 fate fee is pretty sizable, unless you're getting stuff back like a Fate Worse Than Death, which is super, super powerful and restricted. And it's really like it's got the triggering condition as well of having a lower bid, which is going to be difficult to pull off. So I like that they went on the side of making the cards slightly more powerful rather than slightly less with the ruling in terms of balance.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think that it will enter the game as a toolbox card, and it will be a great little 1-of, 2-of for quite a few decks. And at some point, when the card pool hits critical mass, it'll be part of the most degenerative combo the game has ever seen, and it'll get chucked on the ban list. There'll be a new list created just for this card. But for the time being,
it's part of the dream deck though that heads towards a mill deck. It's there. It's closing in.
Correct. Yes, that is very true.
I understand that argument, like slippery slope, getting to this point where there's some degenerate, combo style deck. Get there as a card pool, as a card game, because I think when you push the limits, you learn your lesson, you ban the cards, but then I feel like your design space is wider, the archetypes, and so I feel like pushing the envelope is a good thing.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's totally fine to have a bunch of power effects as long as there's not just one or two powerful effects in a vacuum that massively warp the game. If there's lots of quote-unquote game warping effects, that's fine. That's just what the game is.
Yeah, I think it's just... I guess it's just one of those things where... I'm just saying it'd be nice if they think about these things as they move forward. And I don't mind that it's strong. I think we don't know what the bid meta will be like after all the new jewels come out and Composure, because I'm unsure if bid 5 is really going to stay much longer. But I often have a poor assessment of those things.
I think anyone who's got a very bold, strong opinion on, there's going to be no changes or everyone's only ever going to be one, I think people need to take a step back. Nobody here is Nostradamus. No matter what you've theory crafted and tested, once things hit the wild, you wait a few weeks and it'll be crazy, and then a new norm will be found. But I think it's extremely difficult and foolish to predict what's going to happen in that space.
And we should just be having fun, man, because that's the best part of the card games is when you get a big injection of new cards. It's so much fun to test that stuff. Isn't it just the best?
Get used to that feeling, I reckon, for the next few months.
Yeah.
It's going to be nuts.
Their release schedule is going to be one of the big positives of this year. I think to maintain player interest, having fresh injections monthly, where you can actually tweak your deck as you go through the month, through the year, rather than weekly stress of having to shift your deck. It's going to be a really positive thing. Yeah, it's going to be really great.
We don't want like 4 months without a release. Like that really hurts.
I think it was really good in the first year to give us the 6-in-6 a couple times, because the infant card pools are actually kind of boring in LCGs often.
Yeah. And
so they kind of flung us forward in time and now return us to normalcy, and I'm super happy with it. Super happy.
Yep.
Right. So there's actually we want to start. I think we talked last week about focusing on a particular tournament. Just not necessarily looking at the big Kotes and elemental championships, etc., but actually looking at some local tournaments from across the world. And the first tournament we're focusing on is starting. We're going to start in Perth, Western Australia, my old hometown. Butters, you attended a tournament pretty recently. Do you want to give us a little bit of a lowdown? Where was the tournament held, etc.?
So this was in Stratagem in Western Australia. Stratagem is the store in a suburb called Warwick. It's a bit north. It's our northern store. It's a really lovely store, good people, and it's very, very big. It was decent turnout. We got 10 people. 10 to 11 is the standard up there. And it was the second to last Season 2 prize. So the next one coming up, they would do with the end game with the playmats and everything else. And that went really well. We had a good showing from every clan. There were 3 unicorns for whatever reason.
Whoa.
Plenty of gluttons there for punishment. But no, look, it all went very, very well. There was some good times had. Old Jack played Phoenix and he took out first place again. It was actually a tie that came down to strength of schedule for last.
How many rounds
for first place at the end? 4 rounds.
Okay.
4 rounds for this one over the course of the day. Yep. And there were 4 of us actually went 3-1, and a lot of it came down to we've got I don't know. There's a game that way. Like over here, it's very competitive. Like it's rare for someone to go undefeated in any one tournament. There's you obviously, like most places, just the same few players in like the top 5, but it was a really good day. It always is up there. Everywhere over here is really good fun. I played my new cheap and nasty deck, which is the old Kyuden Baishi, which I think we'll get into. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so I think we might have a deep dive focus on that deck in a little bit there. But tell me about Jack. So is he's a regular Phoenix player, is he?
No, Phoenix is his holiday deck. He is normally a crab guy. Yeah, so he's normally all over the crab. His partner Bruna also, she plays as well. She's a consistent Crane player. Feels like she runs like a quarter cancels in her deck. It's like it's horrid. And then I had a bad time the first time she rocked up and played there. That was unpleasant. But no, they're both really cool people. They both do quite well every time. Jack is routinely takes the tournaments out between him and Aaron most of the time. Aaron is one of the Unicorn players. He does very, very well. He alternates between Unicorn and Lion, so he's he's one of those people.
Yes. So what was the deck? What was the deck that he played? This Phoenix deck.
It's honestly, it's mostly pretty vanilla Phoenix. It's I think because he played Crab for so long. Like at one game, a tournament we had a while back with him, he did the old air chick that gives you sincerity and
the broker.
The broker, and that came off really well against me, and it was bad. It was terrible. Like he had a couple out in every turn, and all these cards were getting drawn. That was pretty bad. It was pretty awful. But no, Jack did really well. One of my MVP moment in that, not that game, it's the dragon player we had, Dylan, was turn 1 as well. Dragon, so resto. I went, I'm just not going to do anything in my entire hand. I had only 4 cards left, and I went, all right, I'm going that province first, hit it, and I hit resto straight away, lost no cards, broke it, and flipped Mitsu out into the discard, and that was just a super good feeling for the rest of that game. After that, he had his Alchemist on turn 2, and the Alchemist got sliced to pieces by Aramoro, followed up by a pretty potent make an opening for 4 points.
Yeah,
took him out. Yeah. It was unexpected, and he didn't really. Aramoro was just on, and then 4-point make an opening. You're out of here. See you later. Yeah. It was super good times. But that's my favorite card at the moment. The old make an opening. We will get into shortly. But yeah, no, look, it's a super good place. Every month, I think in WA here we're getting a new player rock up for or every 2, I guess, 1 to 2 months, slow down a little bit. We get a new player who's competitive and rocks up to all the events, which is really good. So the whole pool is very slowly growing. I think L5R's not been done enough justice, to be honest, across the board. I think it's a really good game, and it's just so hard to get people into it. Because it's so, like, to sit down for an hour and a half is a massive commitment, for when you're learning the game. Not sure if any of you guys remember the early days, like how much you'd have to commit time-wise. Like, I remember 2.5-hour games.
Yeah. But and Ben had to put up with my 2-hour crab games because we didn't play the time, so you just grind out like 7 or 8 turns. Have a great time learning.
I think I got turned off playing Crab and Dragon for that reason. Was like, I wanted to get a game done inside an hour, and that was not happening with those 2 decks.
Actually, talking about Crab, we had another tournament at Good Games, as obviously everyone knows where Good Games. We had one in Cannington here a couple of weeks ago. Or last week, actually, and 2 of our players, a new guy, Jerome, and Andrew Eaton, an old friend of Ben's and mine, it was Crab v Crab, round 1. They got to the end of time, got to the end of overtime, no one had broken a province yet.
Wow.
Just 2 crabs sitting there butting faces, nothing got done the entire game.
That's why you need to tech in the is it the 3-cost Berserker die?
Intimidating heater?
No, the one where if you pass a conflict, you lose a guy.
Aramoro.
The Berserker.
Aramoro, just for the mirror. Just tech that in.
I think he's actually called Amoro, which is
that's right.
Considering there's
Aramoro
as well.
Quite right. No, look, it was all really good. I had a couple of really feel bad wins where duty got played, but
5, 2,
run it.
1, baby.
Super good times. But no, look, they're really good times. They always run quite long. We all have a good laugh. And it's great. I recommend anyone from WA that's listening to come and join us, or anyone that happens to be passing through Perth. We have a competitive event at least every 2 weeks over here somewhere, so get in it.
Excellent. I think next week, or maybe not next week, but at some point in the near future, we will be having some folk from Brisbane in Queensland, which is up in the northeast part of Australia, for those that aren't from Australia, or for those from that are Tasmania and not familiar with the rest of the country. We will be featuring regional humour. Right. Yeah, so we will be featuring some Brizzy folk soon. But for anyone else that's around the world that has some great local tournament, or even like an elemental championship in Iceland, or just like some tournament that gets like no airtime, just let us know. We'd love to feature it, because I guess the idea is we want to, I guess, share. There's so many different experiences the community has, and some people play in pubs, some people play in, like gaming stores, other people play like scout halls, and, just if you play in an unusual location, just, I think it's fun to like listen to how other people play this game, because we're so used to playing it in a particular way.
Does anyone out there play in character? That's what I want to know as well.
I'd be curious to hear, does anyone play L5R not drinking Jackson Coke?
I think that comes standard issue in the core set. It's a bottle of Jack Daniels.
It's where the 2/3 of your cards should be. Just that bottle of Jack.
We should do a bit of a shout out, speaking of playing in character. If anybody ever has the pleasure of playing Lord Shoju on Jigoku, that guy, have you guys played Lord Shoju?
Yeah.
I have. He is so committed to his role. It's really method, and it's, hats off to you, man, wherever you are.
Oh, he's the greatest. I think every time, doesn't matter whether he thrashes me or I beat him, I just feel better about life when I play. I'm like, this guy, he will introduce himself, and he just commentates the game as if he's the Lord of the Scorpion. And it is fantastic.
Yeah, it's fucking magnificent.
What if the plot twist is that it's Frotop just on like a break?
Oh, dude, I would lose my fucking mind. That would be a long con, though. He's been doing it for like a year.
Yeah, I just love that. I love a long con. So this deck that you played, I think you got a deck list. So something fun I want to do is quite often when we're talking about different decks and all these podcasts, we talk about very competitive, like the decks that you see. The same decks all the time, top 16, whatever, of the various Koteis, Discord leagues, what have you. Your deck is what I would call a wild deck. It's a deck that is found deep in the jungle, and not something that you'll see every single day, played day in, day out. You are one of the true innovators. I've been playing with Butters many different card games, not just L5R, but 1,000 different card games, Vitez, Magic, Poker, I don't know, whatever else. And you've always been an innovator. So I wouldn't mind you posting your deck list, which I think you have, and we'll actually provide a link in the podcast description. If you want to just shoot that across to Toreadory via Discord, and Toreadory being the opposite of the innovator, the person who likes to take a well-worn archetype and then tweak it to an inch of its life and then never ever lose a game.
I prefer to just shit on the people creating new decks and then adopt their exact same strategies months later and then claim ownership. That's what I like to do.
Yeah. So if you want to have a look at this deck, what I'd like you to do is just, as you see it, I want you to walk us through it, and I want to get your perspective on how this deck operates, how it plays, what's the ins and outs of it, and then once we've heard you sell this deck. So the idea is you're selling this deck. You're not shitting on this deck.
Okay, so I'm playing the role of salesperson.
You're the salesperson for this deck.
Very good.
And then after you've given your sales pitch, Butters is going to actually tell you how the thought he put into creating it. But for the time being, Butters is going to shut the fuck up, and you're gonna just sell the hell out of this deck.
Isn't it like you're at Worlds, but it's 2019 Worlds, and you're playing this deck?
Aren't you supposed to believe in the product if you're a salesperson?
Yes, and you believe in SKP Cheap and Nasty. So you take it all in.
The deck title, SKP Cheap and Nasty. Love the name. It's Caden Bayushi, so... try something new, guys. Why stick with the same old boring stronghold? Okay, Province Row, Fertile Field, Secret Cache. So Seeker of Air. Upholding Authority, Meditations, Pilgrimage. Interesting. So Pilgrimage instead of Shameful, that's because we don't want to defend, I'm guessing. And we don't care about honoring our guys because we're playing KB. Looking at the Dynasty. 3 to Cow, he's pretty awesome in this build. 2 for 3/1. Moves around when there's dishonored dudes. 3 Aramoro, 3 Shoju. So this has got a lot of murdering. And then it's got favorable ground and storehouse. So I like the Dynasty a lot, actually. It looks pretty solid to me.
So what is it about the Dynasty a lot? What is it about the Dynasty you like?
I like
holdings.
I love the holdings.
So what are the holdings?
No Palace, because Palace is shit in slow decks. Fuck that shit. In fast decks, excuse me. It's got the favorable grounds and storehouses maxed out. So I like that.
Dojo. Yeah.
This is a good when you start on 9 starting honor, because they kind of can allow you to bid a little lower when you sometimes need to and still fill up your hand. And favorable ground is just the sickness in Scorpion, I think. I really like the Aramora and Shoju, the heavy hitters. 3 Hero Way is kind of cool too. I think now that Fate Worse Than Death's out of the meta, having Hero Way is powerful, high Fate expenditure effects. That's cool. Let's have a look at conflict here. This is you got Lion Splash because you got the best splash, you got the second best splash. We're going for the third best splash. Fuck those other splashes. And 2 Guidance of the Ancestors. All right. Why is this in the deck?
You gotta use your imagination.
I'm thinking this through. We're gonna come back to that. The rest of the splash is taken up by 2 Legion of Ones. Huge fan of that. Really, really powerful in Scorpion. Big fan. And we got Ready for Battle, which is pretty good. A little bit. It's not as good as it was last month when Fate Worse Than Death was around, but it's still pretty good. 3 Spies at Court. Huge fan of that. Love that card in this deck. Yeah, 3 Make an Opening. That's fucking dope. Big fan of that.
So tell me, how do you make an opening? How do you make that card work inside the concept in this deck?
Yeah, so you use it with Shoju or Aramora to murder people, but apart from that, I'm trying to be in your favor because there's no maze. Where's the maze, man?
So we don't flip coins in this game.
Well, you got Duty, so you can do 5 to 1, which will get you a make an opening turn. So that's one way. Another way is just to undercut turn 1 if you've got a couple in your hand. So turn 1, I think this deck's supposed to explode. You're supposed to go fast. You got Bayushi Collector for attachment hate. Hang on, where's the restricted card here?
It's Edict. Natural.
Okay, yep. Forge Edict, super good in KB because it doubles as a way to turn on your stronghold, which is super nice. So yeah, I think it's a pretty cool deck. It's going to be faster than your average Scorpion deck, so if you really love the red guys, but you're sick of passing and banking Fate, this is the deck for you.
Cool.
So you missed one of my favorite cards in there is the old Oni Mask.
Oh my god, yeah. Okay. 3 Oni Mask. That's fucking fan of that as well. Free stat pump and a pseudo cloud, but you don't have to run those, which is pretty cool.
Right. So, you kind of give us a bit of overview of this deck, which is fantastic. But I think there's some core fundamental concepts that Nathan put into when he's building this deck. He kind of talked to me about it. Nathan, do you want to run through what's probably a little bit different about this deck to most decks that Bert didn't actually quite get to?
Okay, so first and foremost with this deck, you have to understand the developmental principle under phases. 1, spending Fate on conflict cards is for chumps, and 2 is that Fate is for buying people.
Dude, you've taken a European wisdom and just shat all over it, just thrown it out the window.
This deck, when Fate Worse Than Death went on the restricted list, this deck didn't change.
You had this constructed before that happened.
Yeah. Sorry, I do lie. I lost my rumor monger.
Oh man, that's great.
All right, so there's only like what? Apart from you got your collector and guidance to ancestors. Literally everything else is free in this deck, right? In terms of conflicts.
Only mask, right? It costs one.
Only mask is free.
Yeah, it's free. So absolutely every card is free. There are 2 guidance to the ancestors, which we'll get into in a moment, and there are 3 base you collect.
That's the one card that I was like, man, I don't fucking get this.
All right, so the overall with this deck, the idea is you're drawing bulk cards as often as you can, as much as you can. You've got all the little Scorpion people, you got Frotop Field, Secret Cache, and all the card draw that comes with Scorpion. You've got your 3 Imperial Storehouse. You just draw, and you're never going to run out of fate, right? Because you don't spend fate on your conflict hand, so you can always throw those cards out for the most part. You're always going to be usable. So the more you draw, the better off you're going to be. So you throw in the Earth Ring. And on the flip side, there's all hand pressure on your opponent. So upholding authority, the spies at court, you hit a lot of Earth Rings, you got some cancels in there. All that stuff is super good. So going over, though, to the conflict side, the Oni Mask is obviously in there for stuff all the time. Oni Mask is amazing. You don't have to be in the conflict to use it. You chuck that has a fate. You want to lure the assassinations out of your opponent's hand, so feel free to put fate on your little people so they get murdered, make them nice juicy targets.
I can appreciate the liberation with having a very fate costing conflict deck, because you can do stuff like play Oni Mask and just overfate your winners from your dynasty. I like that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start. So Guidance of the Ancestors, right? So there's 2 of them in there. It's all you need. So you want 1 at any one time for the most part. Most of the time, if you get a favored niece, you just want to turf Guidance of the Ancestors.
Okay, so it's card advantage.
Yeah, and Guidance is still available to you. Also, though, this deck, so turn 1, you bid 5. Okay, naturally. Most of the time, you will have make an opening in your hand, maybe 2 if you're super lucky. Turn 2, you try to bottom out, basically. You drop yourself down to... You bid 1. So then you get this massive advantage out of make an opening that more than makes up for it that turn. And that honor you gained in that turn is your buffer for the rest of the game. So you can start bidding 5 after that. Every time you bid really low, you're playing make an opening, usually to surprise murder someone with Shoju or Aramoro, whom you favorable ground into a conflict when they're already bowed, or you hook shot someone in with Hero and skin them.
Okay, so that's interesting. So in terms of overall strategy, you have 2 turns where make an opening is a big bullet. And it's turn 2 and turn 3, right? Because turn 2 you bid 1, presumably they bid 4 or 5 or 3 or whatever, and then turn 3 you reverse the bids and bid 5 again. So you have two big opportunities to play the card.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, and it juggles around like throughout
plus
the game.
the
If you're on
duty
high
turn.
honor and they're low.
The duty turn you can play as well.
It never. I mean, you have to have it in your hand before you make that play. Like, don't gamble. But I promise you that card is immense value if you just go in there and start swinging it around. Like, it's either side of the conflict, and when you combat with those guys that drop people down, and then Sinister Soci as well, like it takes out a lot of.
Have you thought about adding bonsais in?
I have. Legion of One took that place.
Right.
So I've also got Force Pump off Fine Katanas and Oni Masks and Guidance of the Ancestors. There's a fair whack in there.
And I guess
ready for battle's protection against watering mainly? Are you worried about any particular bow effects, or is it just...
Yes. Well, the other thing is, because I had a Kaiden Bayushi, so many of my people are frequently dishonored. Force Shame also kicks your ass.
Yeah.
So ready for battle really covers it. And again, that's a card that just never... It's never a dead card. Like, it always gets used. And you have it in your hand as well. You can also just... If Shoju's got no fate left on him, you can just leave him and not worry about the water ring getting through, because you can just ready for battle it and keep moving on. So the idea is to get your big people and get them dishonored somehow if you need to, and then start using Kaiden Bayushi. The reason we're on Kaiden Bayushi is because most of the time I'm on higher honor than my opponent because of all the shady tricks I'm pulling, and the original Scorpion box is dead weight when you're on less higher honor. Can't do anything.
You know what I love about the way Nathan's constructed this deck is his quote here is that City of the Open Hand, it's just dead. It's just dead. So that's why it's using Kain Boshi. It's worse than the Crane Box.
Not a usable card. Literally does nothing.
Man, poor Scorpions, they got, just a trash in the game. So glad they got a new one.
So the open eyes.
This is me trying to pull them out of the gutter.
Yeah.
This is what this is.
So the other thing,
okay. They've had wool over their eyes for the whole year.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let me just walk very quickly with Guidance of the Ancestors as well, though, because that's actually a super important card. Because I've got so many Dishonored people in this deck, like it happens, you guys Dishonored, your honor total is often going to get pretty low and pretty unpleasant. So you can, at any time, pay fate, grab it out, drop it on one of your guys that's Dishonored, and then your Baishi collectors can just purge it and get rid of that Dishonor token before. And you ever have just some fate laying around, which happens a lot in this deck. So I'll often, not having played any fate out of my dynasty. Oh, I missed a very important point. All your fate in your dynasty phase, never hold on to it in this deck. It's always you put all your people out with fate on them and go hard. Keep a massive presence on the board and try to push really hard early on. And then you straighten them and keep going and going and going. None of this holding onto it nonsense. That's for chumps.
I love this. So you're like teaching Scorpions, you're like unlearn how they've been playing for the last year. And just like go, no, you know what? You actually, not only do you have a dynasty phase, your dynasty phase is serious. As serious as like a lion or a unicorn dynasty phase.
Yeah, it's maximum. So I'll offer myself out in as much as possible during my dynasty phase, and then because you're a seeker role and rings will pop out, so by sort of turn 2, and sometimes you'll pass first or whatever else, I'll have 3 or 4 fate left over, which is frustrating, right, when you're in a conflict phase. So now and then you just need that extra bump fate sitting there. So if Guidance of the Ancestors is just sat there in your discard, you may as well just grab it and stash it on a guy with the fate you've got laying around doing nothing and just get a bump for free. Like, it also just fill some space. As I said, you turn it over with Favored Niece. You're not losing anything. It lets you just card draw. Synergizes really, really solid with Baishi Collector when you've got lots of Dishonored people.
Is there anything in the upcoming cards that have been spoiled that you think sort of archetype that you've seen so far? Like, do you like the new Poison?
I do, but it costs fate though. Like,
one fate too expensive.
Yeah, like I've thought about. I don't know. Like, it's pretty tight. Like Oni Mask, you couldn't really do without because you need that blanking. Like when someone's guest of honoring you or whatever, and you just pop it on, take out their ability, and that works all the time.
What are your thoughts on
super solid?
Infiltrator's Tools. That's the 0 cost attachment that you attach to a Shinobi character, and it gives the Shinobi character covert. It is free.
Yeah, no.
So
look, I think that's got value. I've got what, 4 Shinobi in here, 3, 4, so maybe.
Aramoro, the Alibi Artist.
You don't want to give up an Oni Mask though, right? It's pretty critical.
No, I'd love to trade out. I don't know, some other card, like maybe.
I think you can make. Have you been able to trigger Spies at Court a lot?
Just all the time. Like,
okay,
whatever
so
I
3.
feel like.
You think 3 is
it's not a.
You can probably cut Assassinate.
Yeah, you could get rid of Assassination. Sometimes it's handy to sort of get you. Well, Assassination's really handy if you just want to get yourself down below 6, so you can start using Alibi Artists. As well.
So just thinking about. I was just thinking about making an opening, right? Is once because sometimes, like, in a tournament, it might take you a couple of turns before you get the dial differential. But I think once you've got that dial differential, assuming the jewels aren't screwing it up, you could actually use trading on the Sand Road, which is free, right? But it means that make an opening will be on for multiple turns. Because trading on the Sand Road means you don't reset your dial.
Yeah, now you're talking my language. So,
how good is Way of the Scorpion with that card? It's like, oh, you want to dishonor a non-Scorpion character, bro?
But then
pick my card, man.
But then but then they can use the make an opening that you draw off the trade in the same.
That's true.
Because the differential will be the same.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't honestly put trading on the Sand Road in this deck because everything is free, right? So my opponent's got shit that costs fate, and all of my stuff costs 0. They just dump. You know,
yeah, that's for that card's for loser Scorpion with 5 and 4 cost fate cards in their
the fate's there to buy things, isn't it? Why would you waste it on some?
What about? Do you ever bluff, Nathan? Do you think bluffing's is it worth holding 4 or 3 just to bluff on a turn?
No. This is not a complicated player's deck, right? You go in, you bid 5, so you get your handful of cards the first turn as much as you can. Then you just, if you have the right cards, you bid low. They won't because no one does. And even if they do, later on in the game, it's going to come off. So you just hang on to it, right?
It seems.
Or at some point, you're going to be on 9 honor, your opponent's going to be on 3, and you can just bid 5, and they have to bid low. And then you're going to have that differential. It's your honor will swing back and forth all the time. In the meantime, you'll have Aramoro or Shoju or some little chud with a ton of attachments on him, and they'll just be hitting Palace with KB. It all just works really well. There's plenty of kill in there, which always feels super good. The negatives, once you hit someone with Aramoro or Shoju, you're loading in, your Sinister Soshi, your Dishonor effects, and then make an opening, and all that piles on together to give a lot of negatives. It's really hard to outrun. I've had heaps of success with it. Super good. Ben had a pretty good couple of games with it as well. That was good times.
Smashed, yeah.
That's good. I strongly recommend it. It's a very liberating sort of. It's not a strong or high thinking deck. You don't really have to worry too much about it.
I think one of the greatest things is. A lot of the time people talk about L5R having all of these complicated layers. I think one of the best things about this deck is fate management, which is generally speaking one of the hardest things to do to kind of become a master of fate management in different decks. This deck here goes, meh, fate management, management. It just throws that shit out the window, you spend it all in Dynasty. So that way you can actually be thinking only about how am I going to win conflicts? How am I going to break provinces? How am I going to win this game? You don't have to be thinking about all that tricky stuff about, geez, I need to get this ring because I need to get this piece of fate so I can play my Watch Commander and my Spyglass. You've got,
I mean, it feels good deck. Playing lots of people and playing lots of cards feels good. So I'll finish out turn 1 usually having probably 3 people on average on the table with fate on them. So I'll have one little chud and then 2 2-costers with a fate apiece. And then in turn 2, you start buying big giants and Kayun Bayushing them so they hit multiple times. Everyone should have a go. And then tear the pieces.
Yeah, you might find a piece or a section of this deck or a little bit of a sub-flavor that you really enjoy that is actually quite strong or interesting to you, and then you can apply that to your deck later as well. You don't have to take the whole list and just play that over and over.
Yeah.
There's some cool stuff in it. Like that interaction with Collector and Guidance, I hadn't even considered. It's really cool.
So, yeah. Well, thanks for that one. Thanks for that one, Nathan. I think we'll get other people to... If you've got a deck out there in Rollerland, and a deck that's outside the meta, you're shooting, from downtown, you're way this analogy is not going anywhere, but if you've got a weird deck that
if you're a fucking weirdo like us,
send it in hiddencityrollers@gmail.com, or just our Hidden City Roller podcast Facebook page. Just send it in and give us an explanation, and then I'll make sure Bert doesn't see it, and we'll try and get him to sell all your weird decks. I think it's a really good exercise because very often when you look at a deck list, it's very, very easy to critique a deck list and just go, oh, it's shit because of this reason, and this is bad, and and by the time you finish tweaking it and doctoring it, it looks exactly like everybody else's Scorpion or Dragon or Crab or whatever deck, and you've dropped the splash and you're back to square one. To actually look at a deck and go, all right, why does this thing work? How can this thing work? And actually make your goal to look at these outside the, weird deck lists.
I agree. And as a community, I don't think we give a lot of credit to innovation.
Yeah.
And I think this is how you innovate, right? You just fucking try shit. And what I would say is, if you're going to submit your deck to us, just maybe write a paragraph about and what it's trying to do. And then I'll try and decipher what I think it's trying to do, and then we can read out what you guys think it's trying to do. That could be cool.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, dig it. Nice.
So before we leave you, there's a couple of events that are happening. We want to kind of highlight some things that are going on Australia-wise. In Australia Day weekend, there is CanCon, which is the Canberra, Australian Capital Territory. They are running an L5R tournament. I'm not sure if I'm going to be going yet, but I'm trying to figure out a way to get there. But I know there's a few Melburnians going and some Sydney-siders. I don't know how big it'll be, but hopefully it'll be good. It was a great event last year, so hopefully it'll be a great event this year.
It was one of my favourite times of the whole year last year, CanCon. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was a big event last year, wasn't it, for 5 ranks?
There was 30 of us, and there was an Airbnb, and there was 6 of us nerds just sitting around in our shorts with cards just strewn all about the fucking place, drinking beer games all night and day.
Yeah. It was beer, vegan taco.
Was that the strip fight bar I heard about?
The what?
Dude, a bunch of young blokes.
I heard rumours.
Just playing cards, a few beers involved, and then, just Aussie larrikinism.
Just what happens. It's all good. All right. But no, it was a fantastic weekend, to be honest, and I'm sure it'll be great this time as well. So shout out to the folks that have who have taken on the mantle and trying to actually make the thing work this year. I think KP's taken a break this year. But then also we do have Utaku Yamada, aka Melissa Marsh, who's going to be on the Sixth Ring podcast shortly. She's organising Rokugan Go, which is a meta game. It's a giant LARP, as in live action role playing L5R. So that's happening in Sydney at Icon, and we'll put a link. I believe it's Icon. I'll put a link in the description for the podcast today. And you can have a look at that. And I think that's happening in about February, but registrations have opened, and it's a big game, and it usually fills up pretty quick. There'll be over 50 people. And the idea of it, you actually get in teams. So there's the lion team, the crane team, the scorpion team, and you all get goals. And you've got to go off with your teams and then figure out how you're going to screw over the Crane Clan or.
So I've never done a LARP. It's going to sound like a bit of a silly question, but is everyone putting on a bad Japanese accent, or how does it work?
One would hope not. That's a question.
That's a serious question. I would love to.
I've only ever played in Western themed LARPs. I've not played in a Japanese themed one before, but I'm sure that there are some culturally sensitive methods of ensuring that you're honouring the culture and not. I just, you know what? I'm not running the LARP. You can check that out. You can ask her those questions, and yeah.
Dope.
Okay. All right. Nobody else wants to comment. That's fantastic. But I do know they can be super fun. The metagame big team-based LARPs. So So get involved if you're into that sort of thing.
Can you be super meta? Can you play L5R while LARPing as L5R?
I am sure that's been done before. You can play a game of Go.
Yeah, I'll get my AI to beat them.
Deep mind.
Get some app on your phone that you paid $150 for, some solver.
And I'm going to call out. I'll let you guys do some shout outs in a second, but I'm going to call out one other tournament which is going to be super amazing. I hope I'm going to it. I think some other folks are going to it this Saturday. So we're talking a few days after maybe the day after you're listening to this podcast. General Games in Malvern is having a Season 3, very first Season 3 tournament. It's going to be super fun. So look that up if you're a Melbourneite. We're trying to get as many people to go as possible. Hopefully it'll be fantastic. You guys got anything you wanted to call out, shout out?
That tournament looks like it's going to be a pretty sizable crowd, actually. We sort of bigger one in... I'm psyched.
Yeah, should hopefully be the good one to kick off. Glenn, you got anything you wanted to shout out?
Just for any Australian listeners, there's a current survey up to try and gauge numbers for both trying to apply for an official Kotai as well as for an unofficial Nationals event. So you can find that on the Facebook group for Australia, L5R Australia. It's also in the Discord. And so it'd be great if you're from Australia and you will be in Australia this year in 2019. If you can fill that out in the next week, that'd be great, just to pass on to the people it needs to be passed on to, because we're going to try and build a stronger tournament scene as we head into 2019.
I have one shout out. This is for Simcof, wherever you are, Simcof. Shout out to you for shout out to you for once again destroying me in the group stage of a tournament and then just absolutely falling to pieces in the cup. I really appreciate that.
Enjoy your top 16 spot or top 32 or whatever I scrubbed out in the flashback cup.
You're up against it. Charge for Greater Glory and Miramur Siri all in the same decks. Pretty rough.
Yeah. Dremple and Lime were good. They're great now. What were we talking about? Nathan? What have you got?
Yeah, no. Lots of tournaments coming up. We're already in Season 3. And we're having, in a few weeks, at Stratagem again, the end of Season 2. So winning the playmats, all the tokens, all the good stuff. Dead keen to see it.
So probably...
Or an element.
Yeah.
As well.
You got an elemental
That would be sick. That would be awesome if Perth got one of those.
What I was going to say is there is a giant list of elemental championships that is available on the FFG site. I'll link it again in the podcast there. But there are an absolute bucket load of elemental championships coming up. So if you're in Louisville, if you're close to Johnny C Cards, Game Castle, Sci-Fi City in Knoxville, Y2 Comics in Fort Worth, Your Hobby Place Limited in Martinsburg. Like, there's a whole bunch of just elemental championships. Like, look up this page and figure it out. If you're in the US,
I'm so excited for all the data too.
Yeah, China, man.
Have a look at all that.
2 days from recording, in the Shanghai Champion card game shop has an elemental championship. So I'm really keen to see what the China meta's like. So just there's all sorts of
cheaper
stuff
for me to fly there than Melbourne.
That might actually be true. So
That's super cool. I didn't even know China had a meta, so that's really awesome.
Yeah. It's all on this list here, so it's fantastic. So what I would say is there is a bazillion tournaments coming up. Support your friendly local gaming store, because that's what keeps this game going. Keep those guys going. Keeps us going, and keep on rolling, and we'll catch you next week.